The Black Death was one of the worst pandemics to ever hit Europe and maybe even the world.
It had devastating effects on the people of medieval Europe. Even though they quarantined, it still killed many people. The Black Death had an immense impact on Europe and its people. However, it wasn't only the people that were impacted. Europe's economy and people's wages were impacted too. The origin of the Black Death, also known as the Plague, dates back to ancient Rome. It is believed that the plague was one of many outbreaks caused by Yersinia pestis, a type of bacteria carried by rodents. There are 3 types of plague: bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic. Yersinia pestis was found in 1894 by Alexander Yersinia and Kitaso Shibara. It is believed that the epidemic in ancient Rome was the first outbreak of Yersinia pestis. It was then known as the Justinian Plague of Rome. The main symptoms of Justinian were bobos or bulges on the skin, just like the plague. With treatment, the fatality rate is around 1 to 15% for the bubonic plague. Without treatment, the fatality rate is 50%. Septicemic plague can happen when the bacteria spreads into the bloodstream. It can lead to abdominal pain, shock, and bleeding into the skin and other organs. The last type of plague is the most deadly form of plague, the pneumonic plague. This is when the bacteria is spread to your lungs. The symptoms include trouble breathing, chest pain, coughing up blood, and mucus. The treatment must begin within 24 hours. If it does not, then the fatality rate is 100%. The bubonic and septicemic plagues are transmitted through infected flea bites. The pneumonic plague is the only type of plague that can be transmitted through direct contact. In medieval Europe, if you're poor and lived on the streets, you're very likely to get the plague. You have to be very careful. If you got the plague, it would be hard to survive since you couldn't afford treatment.
On the other hand, if you had the money, you could afford good doctors, make sure you were as safe as possible, and be as far away as others as possible.
Also, during the 1300s, Europe was very crowded, and grains were stored in such a way that rodents could easily infest the food.
People were in very close contact because of overcrowding, which also made it even easier for the plague to infect Europe. Germany, France, Italy, and England were impacted the most by the outbreak of the Black Death. The Black Death killed about 25 million people in Europe. The main belief to what ended the Black Death was the introduction of quarantine in Venice. The Italian government did this to hopefully stop the spread of the Black Death. It was advised that people who didn't have the disease stay home so they didn't catch the disease. Another thing they did was plan emergency cemeteries for the dead so they wouldn't infect others.
At the time, the government was said to be too simple for a big outbreak. This was because they couldn't control the people like today's government can. They also made a thing called pest houses. This was for families with people who died from the Black Death.
The Black Death had a massive impact on the European economy. This is because about 1/3 of the population of Europe died. This made it harder to find people to harvest crops and plow fields. Workers who violated the statute of laborers were fined and put in stocks. Although the worker population decreased, the amount of land and tools did not change. Some farm animals died when the people who took care of them got sick. Because the remaining workers had more tools and land to work, they became more productive, producing more goods. When workers are more productive, employers are willing to pay higher wages. Some lords avoided violating the statute by paying workers with food or other goods rather than wages. Some lords began to pay illegally high wages. That was why the Black Death was so impactful on the people of Europe.